So, you don't have £300 to blow on an S7 or £600 to blow on an S8, so you really have two options if you want a non-note level Samsung flagship, the S5 and the S6 Edge. Though today we'll actually be covering the S5 and the S6 Edge instead of the S6, so I'm Ryan Thomas with Feltech, and this is my battle between the S5 and the S6 Edge from Samsung in 2017. Just to mention some issues before we get into the video, these phones have knocks, which can be a good or a bad thing depending on your stance when it comes to that, although I find it's pretty annoying when trying to install custom ROMs, but loads of people get through it, not a problem. Also, there have been some serious battery problems with these, which isn't too bad for the S5 because you can just replace the battery in a jiffy, although it might take a little bit more time and skill with the S6 Edge considering it's got a closed back. The S5 came out in February of March 2014 and the S6 Edge March of 2015. So they're 2 to 3 years old, which isn't ancient, and it means you get lots of creature comforts that you'd expect from recent flagships, but we'll get to that in a short while. So you can pick up the S5 from around £100 to £150 and the S6 Edge from £150 to £250. The designs of these phones, disregarding the materials, are immensely similar. You compare them. You get standard fare of a home button, come fingerprint scanner, flanked by capacitive back and multitasking buttons below the screen, along with a front-facing camera, call speaker, and light sensor above the screen. You get a lock button on the right and volume buttons on the left. You get top-centered rear camera on the back with a flash and a heart rate monitor close by. Up top is a SIM slot and IR blaster on the S6 Edge, and the headphone jack and IR blaster atop the S5. On the bottom, you're getting a USB micro B 3.0 port on the S5, whereas on the S6 Edge, you get a micro B 2.0 port and a headphone jack and the speaker. So now you've had a tour of the very similarly planned out devices, let me tell you the unparalleled difference between the two. The build quality. Samsung was once known for creating pretty terribly built hardware with plastic, but now it's known for its gorgeous designs such as the one with the S8, with the S6 and the S7. And the S6 Edge was the phone that really made that change. The curved piece of glass up front is stunning and the metal rails just complement this really well. Whereas if we switch over to the S5, we're getting plastic rails and a plastic back. Okay, it doesn't look great, but to be fair, the dated B-roll doesn't do it too much justice. But the back is removable and you do get micro SD expansion and removable battery on the S5. So if I had to pick a winner here, the S6 Edge wins very clearly in terms of its form, but the S5 is far superior in terms of its function, as the S6 Edge doesn't come with micro SD expansion and the S5 has IP67 water and dust resistance. The screens on Samsung flagships since the S3 really have been the best. We're talking about the S5 right now, with which you get a 5.1 inch 1080p Super AMOLED display with a pixel density of 432 ppi, excellent black levels and great contrast. These panels get super bright, so outdoor use really isn't an issue with either of these phones, which is great, and this is a plenty sharp enough panel too. It was my first proper experience with an AMOLED display back in the day, and it completely blew me away with its clarity, contrast, and poppy nature. An excellent screen. The S6 Edge, on the other hand, takes it to another level because it's a 5.1 inch 1440p Super AMOLED panel that takes that pixel density figure to a whole new level at 577 ppi, which is just mental. This means that any kind of small text on the screen is super readable as long as your eyesight is good enough to compete with that mind. These panels are super high res, and doing pretty much anything on them is not a problem. I would really recommend both considering they are the best panels. The cameras on these phones are very similar in terms of their spec. They are getting 16 megapixel sensors on both, and they can both shoot UHD video at 30 FPS and 720p video at 120 FPS for slow motion. However, you're getting slightly faster glass with the S6 Edge at f1.9 versus f2.2 on the S5. This means that the S6 Edge's shooter will give you more bokeh, which means that background is nice and milky and that crispy foreground is fantastic. The main difference I think that not a lot of people think about when it comes to cameras on phones is that you can actually save the photos and videos on the micro SD card on the S5, where you are stuck with onboard storage or cloud storage on the S6 Edge. These cameras are really rather impressive for their age, and you will be getting some awesome Instagram shots with these things and very, very good amateur YouTube video. I mean, you can actually get a great picture out of these with a good phone tripod and a microphone. Combined with SuperPass autofocus, this actually means you can create some pretty cool vlogs on them too. The secondary cameras on these phones are great for selfies with nice wide angle lenses, but you're getting a significantly higher resolution on the S6 Edge with a 5 megapixel shooter as opposed to the 2 megapixel shooter on the S5. Both of these cameras are going to work great. I really do like Samsung's wide angle lenses, and that's one of the main reasons I'm hanging on to my S7 Edge instead of upgrading to an iPhone 7 Plus. The performance specs of these phones are rather different, with the S5 featuring a quad-core Snapdragon 801 system on a chip with 2GB of RAM, and the S6 Edge featuring a Samsung in-house Exynos 7420 quad-core system on the chip with 3GB of RAM. The performance bump is something that you can really tell in person, and so the S6 Edge clearly wins here for me. But if you guys install custom software on here, you'll get a much better experience, as I believe the software is the issue here, but we'll get onto that in a second. The hardware is good enough to get you through everyday tasks like Snapchat, Facebook, and with some 3D games too, you can actually have some pretty good fun. And with the high pixel density of the screen on the S6 Edge, you could kind of use it for VR. Now, as for that software, you're getting a fairly bloated skin atop of Android on both units. However, the 6.0 latest update on the S6 Edge isn't too bad, and a lot of users have been commenting on my videos saying it's actually pretty good, but I'm not a huge fan of the bloat on Samsung phones. Luckily, you can disable most of it, or at least you can on the S6 and the S7, but the S5 does fall short when it comes to performance, and I think this is basically due to the software alone. I reckon if you could put stock software on here, it would make it much better in terms of its performance and battery life. Talking about the battery life, I believe this is one of the main reasons that Samsung units use a lot of value over the time, is number one because of the battery life, and number two, the software that's affecting the battery life. And with the S5 you can just replace it or upgrade it, which is fine, but the S6 Edge makes it a little bit more difficult with a sealed device that you have to really get into and peel apart, and with which you can potentially break your device. The speakers on these devices are rather different. We have a rear facing rather tinny unit on the S5 and an only marginally better bottom firing unit on the S6 Edge. Neither of these are really good speakers, but they're there I guess. You're getting fingerprint scanners on both of these devices, which is pretty good. Unfortunately, the one on the S5 isn't great because it's not that accurate, it's fairly slow and requires a swipe instead of a static press like the S6 Edge does, which is a much more accurate and much quicker scanner. So there you are. Arguably the best thing about these phones is the plethora of features that you get, such as the heart rate monitors, Super AMOLED screens, fingerprint scanners and wireless charging on both. And I really think this is what makes Samsung a really good buy in 2017. Overall, I would take the S5 surprisingly due to the microSD expansion and removable battery. Call me crazy, but both of those features mean way more to me than a high-res screen, better build quality or fingerprint scanner at this price. Anyway guys, that's it from me. Thank you all for watching. Please do like or dislike this video based on your thoughts and post any feelings in the comments below. Please subscribe if you're new around here and I'll catch you in the next video. I've been Ryan Thomas, this has been Fail Tech, and I'll see you. Peace.